Your pantry is a graveyard. You stare at those 50-pound bags of white rice stacked in the corner, feeling a false sense of security. You believe you are prepared. You believe that when the grid goes dark, when the supply chains shatter, you will feast while others starve. But you are wrong. In a true urban collapse, that rice isn't food. It is a stone. It is a paperweight. Without the infrastructure to process it, raw grain is biologically useless to the human digestive system. You have fallen into the oldest trap set by the survival industry, the illusion of volume over utility. They sell you bulk grains because the profit margins are high and the shelf life protects their inventory, not your life. They don't tell you the thermodynamic cost of making that grain edible. To convert raw rice into a digestible carbohydrate, you need starch gelatinization. This process requires maintaining water at a rolling boil, 100 degrees Celsius, for at least 20 minutes. Do the math. In a grid-down scenario, where the municipal gas lines are severed and the electrical grid is dead, thermal energy becomes your most finite resource. Every British thermal unit, BTU, you burn to heat water is a BTU you cannot use to heat your body during a winter freeze. If you are relying on a camping stove with limited propane canisters to cook rice, you are effectively burning your life support to prepare a low-calorie filler. You are trading a non-renewable resource, fuel, for a low-density energy source. This is a negative return on investment. Physics dictates that you will run out of fuel long before you run out of rice. And when the fuel is gone, you are left with hard, indigestible pellets that will crack your teeth and bloat your stomach without providing the caloric intake necessary to stave off hypothermia or perform manual labor. You need to stop thinking like a chef and start thinking like a biological machine. Survival is not about a balanced diet. It is about caloric efficiency and the preservation of energy. You need foods that require zero thermal input. You need mass that is ready to metabolize the second it hits your tongue. You need to walk past the health food aisle, ignore the organic labels, and go straight to the shelves they tell you to avoid. The processed, chemical-laden, calorie-dense junk food is your salvation. These items are engineered for shelf stability and massive energy delivery. They are weaponized calories. Item number 1, the Lipid Brick. You know it as peanut butter. The average civilian looks at a jar of peanut butter and sees a sandwich spread. You need to see a localized, high-density fuel cell. This is not food. This is emergency combustion for your mitochondria. The nutritional hierarchy of survival is dictated by the energy density of macronutrients. Carbohydrates and proteins provide roughly 4 calories per gram. Fats, or lipids, provide 9 calories per gram. Peanut butter is roughly 50% fat. This means for every gram of weight you carry in your pack, you are carrying more than double the potential energy of rice or beans, with zero preparation cost. Consider the engineering behind this product. Commercial peanut butter is a masterpiece of food preservation technology. Through the process of hydrogenation, manufacturers stabilize the oils to prevent rancidity. They add sugar and salt, which act as natural preservatives by lowering water activity. Bacteria and mold require moisture to propagate. The water activity in commercial peanut butter is so low that microbial growth is virtually impossible in a sealed container. You can leave a jar on a shelf for 5 years, open it in a contaminated zone, and it will be as safe and potent as the day it was manufactured. They, the nutritionists and health gurus, demonize hydrogenated oils and added sugars because in a sedentary, caloric surplus society, these things cause obesity and heart disease. But in a survival scenario where your body is shivering to maintain homeostasis and you are burning 4,000 calories a day securing your perimeter, heart disease is a luxury problem you won't live long enough to experience. You need the artery-clogging sludge. You need the rapid glucose spike from the sugar to power your brain, and the slow-burning, immense heat generated by the lipids to keep you moving. Furthermore, the psychological impact of fat consumption cannot be overstated. The human brain is 60% fat. In high-stress environments, specifically under the threat of violence or starvation, the brain demands lipids. A spoonful of peanut butter triggers a dopamine response that raw rice can never achieve. It is a morale multiplier. It costs less than $2 a jar. It requires no can opener, no water, no fire, no noise, and no light to prepare. You can consume it in the dark, in silence, while hiding from a patrol. Try doing that with a pot of boiling rice. But lipids alone are not enough. You need to address the sodium imperative. The second item on the list is one that the health-conscious despise, yet it possesses a hidden utility that turns a biological weakness into a strength. We are moving to the canned goods aisle, but not for the vegetables. We are looking for the chemical sludge known as canned chili. Most people stockpile canned vegetables, green beans, corn, peas. This is a tactical error. Canned vegetables are primarily water and cellulose. They offer almost no caloric value. You would have to eat 10 cans of green beans to equal the energy output of a single can of cheap, processed chili or beef stew. But the caloric density is only half the equation. The real secret lies in the preservatives. Look at the sodium content on a can of cheap chili. It is astronomical. In a normal world, 1,000 milligrams of sodium per serving is a health hazard. In a survival world, specifically one involving physical exertion and dysentery, sodium is an electrolyte shield. When you sweat from exertion or lose fluids through illness, which is inevitable when sanitation collapses, you lose salt. Hyponatremia, low blood sodium, creates confusion, seizures, and muscle failure. If you are drinking filtered rainwater or boiled river water, you are drinking mineral-depleted water. You need to replace the salts. The junk chili acts as a dual-purpose supply. It provides the protein and fats for muscle maintenance, and the massive sodium load necessary to retain water and maintain blood pressure. Moreover, the sauce in these cans is often thickened with modified food starch. This creates a viscous fluid that can be consumed cold. Unlike the congealed fat of a high-end soup that becomes unpalatable without heat, the chemical emulsifiers in cheap chili keep the texture consistent at ambient temperatures. You can shovel it into your mouth cold, straight from the tin, and your body accepts it. It is efficient, it is ugly, it keeps you alive. But calories and electrolytes are useless if your digestive tract is failing. In a grid-down scenario, sanitation standards plummet immediately. The water you scavenge will contain microparticulates and bacteria. Even with filtration, cross-contamination is a statistical inevitability. The result is not just discomfort, it is the single greatest killer in human history: dysentery. When your bowels liquefy, you are ejecting water and nutrients faster than you can ingest them. You die of dehydration while holding a canteen. This brings us to item number 3, instant potato flakes. Do not look at the fresh produce section. A raw potato is 80% water. It is heavy, it rots within weeks, and it requires significant thermal energy to make edible. It is a logistical burden. The box of instant flakes, however, is a marvel of industrial desiccation. They mock it as fake food, but chemically, it is superior for survival. The manufacturers have already done the heavy lifting, cooking, mashing, and dehydrating the tuber down to its base starch structure. By removing the water weight, they have increased the caloric density per cubic inch by a factor of 5. A single box, weighing mere ounces, contains the carbohydrate load of a 10-pound sack of raw potatoes. But its true value is medical. You need to understand the concept of hygroscopy. Potato flakes are aggressively hygroscopic. They demand moisture. In a medical emergency where a family member is suffering from severe diarrhea, these flakes act as an internal absorbent. When ingested, even without prehydration, they pull excess fluid from the intestinal tract to rehydrate themselves. They function as a binding agent, solidifying stool and halting the lethal loss of fluids. You are not buying a side dish. You are buying a tactical gut cement that mimics the effects of medical-grade anti-diarrheals without the prescription. Furthermore, because the starch chains have already been broken down during the factory processing, your body does not need to expend energy to digest them. It is instant glucose access for a system in shock. You can mix them with cold water to create a paste that is bland enough to stay down when nothing else will. Item number 4, the Ramen Brick. Stop thinking of this as soup. If you are boiling water to make broth, you are failing the IQ test of survival. The packet of noodles is not pasta. It is a deep-fried carbohydrate block. During the manufacturing process known as flash frying, the raw noodles are dipped in hot oil. The water inside the dough boils out instantly and is replaced by fat lipids. This is the crucial exchange. Standard pasta is just flour and water, pure carbohydrates. The ramen brick is a carb-lipid hybrid. This preservation method effectively fossilizes the food, coating it in a layer of fat that prevents oxygen from reaching the starch, halting oxidation. The survival industry tries to sell you hardtack, flour biscuits that are so dense they can break your teeth and offer zero fat content. The ramen brick is the modern, superior evolution of hardtack. It is brittle, easily crushed, and can be eaten dry like a cracker. When you consume it dry, you are getting the full calorie count, roughly 380 calories per small block, without wasting a single drop of water or an ounce of fuel. And then there is the silver packet, the flavor dust. They tell you it is poison, loaded with monosodium glutamate, MSG. In your comfortable life, you avoid MSG. In the apocalypse, MSG is a neurotransmitter hack. Known as umami, it triggers a specific receptor on the tongue that signals the presence of protein to the brain, even if no protein is actually present. Why does this matter? Flavor fatigue. In a long-term survival situation, eating the same bland rations day after day leads to appetite suppression. The psychology of the survivor creates a feedback loop where you simply stop eating because the food is repulsive. The intense, hyper-salty, chemical-savory punch of that seasoning packet tricks the brain into salivating, forcing you to eat when you have no appetite. It is a weapon against anorexia of stress. It is tradable currency in every prison system on Earth for a reason. It turns garbage into something edible. This brings us to the final, most overlooked category. We have covered fats, sodium, medical starch, and carb-lipid hybrids. Now we must address the engine of the mind. When the adrenaline fades and the reality of the collapse sets in, the most dangerous threat to your family is not starvation, but lethargy and despair. You need a stimulant that is shelf-stable, barter-ready, and chemically potent. You do not need coffee beans. Coffee beans go stale. They require grinding. They require brewing. They are high maintenance. Item number 5. Instant drink crystals, specifically orange or fruit punch. You are looking for the cheapest, most artificial powder on the shelf, the kind that lists sugar as the first ingredient and citric acid as the second. In a survival scenario, you are fighting a losing battle against hypoglycemia, low blood sugar. When blood sugar crashes, cognitive function nosedives. You make bad decisions. You get cold. You get shaky. You need a glycemic spike that hits the bloodstream faster than digestion can process solid food. The sugar in these crystals is simple sucrose and dextrose. It crosses the blood-brain barrier almost instantly. But the hidden tactical advantage is the citric acid and the artificial coloring. Water storage is a nightmare. Even treated water, stored in plastic drums for months, develops a flat, plastic taste that is nauseating to children and the elderly. If your family refuses to drink enough water because it tastes like polyethylene, they enter the dehydration spiral. A teaspoon of this chemical powder masks the taste of iodine tablets, bleach treatment, or the staleness of long-term storage. It makes the undrinkable drinkable. Furthermore, citric acid is a preservative and a pH adjuster. In high enough concentrations, it creates an environment hostile to bacterial growth. It is not a replacement for water purification, but it is a redundancy layer. And never underestimate the value of a treat. When the world is gray, cold, and dangerous, the psychological shock of a bright neon orange drink that tastes like pure sugar is enough to reset a child's panic response. It is a cheap, synthetic morale booster that fits in your pocket. You have now spent less than $10. You have secured lipids, electrolytes, starch binders, hybrid carbs, and high glycemic stimulants. You have ignored the organic aisle and the bulk grain bins. You have applied the laws of chemistry and thermodynamics to your pantry. But having the supplies is only the first step. The trap they set for you next is not about what you buy, but where you put it. Most preppers build a centralized horde, a dragon's cave of supplies in their basement. This is a tactical suicide pact. This is the tactical suicide pact, the single point of failure. In systems engineering, a single point of failure, SPOF, is a part of a system that, if it fails, will stop the entire system from working. By stacking your peanut butter, your chili, and your ramen in one basement room, you have created a SPOF. You have aggregated your life force into a single set of GPS coordinates. You have done the work for the raider. You have built a loot box. They, the movies, the forums, the fantasy writers, sell you the image of the bunker. They sell you the fantasy of defending a stronghold. This is military incompetence. In a kinetic engagement, the defender is static, the attacker is dynamic. The attacker chooses the time, the angle, and the method of the breach. Physics favors the aggressor. If a fire starts upstairs, whether accidental or caused by a Molotov cocktail thrown through a window, thermodynamics dictates that heat rises, but structural collapse goes downward. Your basement fortress becomes an oven, then a tomb. If a flood occurs, gravity turns your horde into a soup of sewage and destroyed calories. If an armed group breaches your perimeter, they only need to control one room to own 100% of your assets. You must abandon the concept of the horde and adopt the doctrine of distributed logistics. This is how insurgency networks survive against superior military powers. You must fragment your supply chain. You need to calculate your loss tolerance. If you have 10 jars of peanut butter in 10 different locations and a raider finds one, you have lost 10% of your calories. You survive. If you have 10 jars in one box and they find the box, you have lost 100%. You die. Do not dig holes in the backyard. Fresh earth is a visual beacon to anyone with eyes. It screams treasure. Instead, utilize the structural dead space of your own home. They built your house with inefficiency. Use it. Look at your interior doors. Most modern residential doors are hollow core. They are two thin sheets of veneer over a cardboard honeycomb or empty air. By removing the pins from the hinges and taking the door off, you can drill into the top or bottom rail. You can slide slim items, packets of tuna, vacuum-sealed spices, cash, or silver into the void of the door itself. A standard door can hold 5 pounds of compressed supplies without warping. To an intruder, it is just a door. They will kick it open to look for the safe, never realizing the calories are inside the wood they are kicking. Look at your HVAC system. Behind the return air vent, there is often a cavity between the studs that is not part of the active ductwork. It is dead space. Unscrewing a vent cover takes 30 seconds. It is a natural cache point that sits at eye level, yet is psychologically invisible because the brain filters it out as infrastructure. But concealment is only the first layer of defense. The second layer is deception. You must exploit the psychology of the looter. When a desperate human breaks into a space, they are operating on high adrenaline and fear. They want a quick reward so they can leave before a counterattack occurs. If they search and find nothing, their anxiety spikes. They become destructive. They rip open walls, they burn furniture, they interrogate the occupants. You cannot present an empty house. You must provide a sacrificial cache. You need a decoy pantry. In the obvious kitchen cabinet, place a few cans of expired soup, a half-empty bag of rice, and some visible water bottles. This satisfies the search and reward loop in the intruder's brain. They kick in the door, they check the cupboard, they see the food, they bag it, and they leave, thinking they have cleaned you out. They feel successful. Meanwhile, your actual caloric density, the peanut butter and drink crystals, is distributed inside the box spring of your mattress, taped behind the drawers of your dresser, and inside the hollow curtain rods. You trade the decoy to buy safety for the primary asset. This is pragmatic loss management. However, even the most perfectly hidden supply chain faces a more ruthless enemy than the looter: entropy. They tell you to buy food with a 25-year shelf life so you can set it and forget it. This is a lie designed to sell you freeze-dried dust. There is no such thing as forgetting in survival. Entropy is the second law of thermodynamics. Systems tend toward disorder. Cans rust, seals degrade, rats chew, chemicals break down. If you do not interact with your supplies, they are dying. You must implement the FIFO protocol: first in, first out. You are not a museum curator, you are a warehouse manager. You must eat your survival food. If you are not eating the cheap chili and the ramen now, your gut biome will reject it when the crisis hits. Your digestive system is an adaptive biological engine. It produces specific enzymes based on your habitual diet. If you switch abruptly from a high-fiber, fresh food diet to a high-sodium, processed sludge diet during a high-stress event, you will induce gastrointestinal shock. You will be incapacitated by cramps and nausea at the exact moment you need peak physical performance. You need to integrate the junk into your weekly routine. Eat the ramen. Replace the ramen. Eat the peanut butter. Replace the peanut butter. This creates a living pantry. It ensures that your stock is never more than 6 months old. It ensures your body is enzyme adapted to the chemical preservatives. It ensures you catch the rusted can or the mouse-chewed bag before it becomes a critical failure. But let us assume you have the calories, the water, and the hidden logistics. You are fed, hydrated, and secure. Now you face the threat that physics cannot solve, the threat that comes from the biological imperative of others. You are not the only one trying to survive. And when the grid goes down, the first thing to collapse is not the power lines. It is the social contract. The moment the lights go out, the clock starts ticking on a phenomenon known as the civilization veneer. It is thinner than you think. Sociologists estimate that any major city is only 9 meals away from anarchy. That is 3 days. After 3 days of hunger, the average human ceases to be a neighbor and reverts to being an apex predator. And the most dangerous predator is not the stranger. It is the one who knows you have food. The survival industry sells you guns and ammo to fight off the hordes. They focus on ballistics. They ignore sociology. The horde is not coming from the next city. The horde is coming from next door. The horde is coming from next door. You know their names. You have borrowed their lawnmower. You have waved to them in the driveway. But you must understand that the human conscience is a luxury product of a caloric surplus. When the surplus vanishes, the conscience evaporates. It is a biological calculation, The survival of their offspring supersedes their loyalty to you. This is the zero-sum game of the suburbs. In a resource-constrained environment, every calorie you possess is a calorie denied to them. To them, your stockpile is not your property. It is the theft of their children's future. They, the community leaders and religious figures, preach charity. They tell you to build a community garden. They tell you to share. In a localized disaster like a hurricane, this works because help is arriving. The social contract is paused, not broken. But in a total collapse, charity is an information leak. If you give a starving neighbor a can of beans, you have not saved them. You have merely identified yourself as a target of opportunity. You have signaled two things. First, that you have resources, and second, that you are soft enough to part with them. You have triggered a behavioral cascade. The neighbor will eat the beans, remain hungry, and return. When they return, they will not be alone. They will bring others, or they will talk. Information travels faster than a virus in a desperate population. Once the knowledge of your calories enters the public domain of the neighborhood, your security is mathematically impossible to maintain. You cannot guard a perimeter 24/7 against a threat that knows exactly where the loot is. The only way to win this game is to never play it. You must enforce strict information warfare protocols. This brings us back to the physics of the junk food we selected in part 1. We chose them for calories, yes, but we also chose them for olfactory discipline. The sense of smell is the most primal and dangerous sense in the animal kingdom. A starving human has a heightened olfactory sensitivity. The smell of cooking food, searing meat, boiling garlic, heating spices can travel hundreds of yards depending on wind shear and humidity. If you fire up a propane stove to cook healthy, raw beans or rice, you are sending an invisible dinner bell to every desperate soul within a quarter-mile radius. Walls do not stop smells. Ventilation systems broadcast them. This is why the Lipid Brick, peanut butter, and the cold, viscous sludge, canned chili, are tactical assets. They require zero heat. They emit minimal odor. You can consume them in a closet with the door taped shut and leave no sensory signature. Survival is a cold meal. If you are cooking, you are dying. But olfactory discipline is only half the battle. You must master visual deception. This is the doctrine of the gray man, but not the way the tactical magazines sell it. They tell you to wear boring clothes and blend in. That is amateur. You don't just need to blend in, you need to appear wretched. You must engage in performance starvation. If your neighbors are losing 10 pounds a month and you maintain your body weight because of your secret supply of peanut butter, your health becomes suspicious. Your rosy cheeks are a beacon of guilt. Your energy level is an anomaly. Humans are pattern recognition machines. They will notice that you are not shuffling your feet. They will notice you are not scavenging. You have to act the part. Wear baggy clothes to hide your muscle mass. Walk with a lethargic gait. Do not shave. Do not wash your hair. If you go outside to gather water, you must look as broken and desperate as they are. You must complain loudly about your hunger. You must ask them for food, even while your belly is full of high-density lipids. By demanding help from those who have nothing, you psychologically disarm them. They cannot suspect you of hoarding if you are begging. This is aggressive social camouflage. It is manipulation, pure and simple. And it is necessary. However, there is a threat that exists beyond the neighbors and the looters. It is a threat that comes from within your own biology. It is the failure of the hardware itself. We have discussed fuel for the body, but we have not discussed the temperature of the machine. Hypothermia is the silent assassin of the urban environment. They tell you to buy expensive wool blankets and 0-degree sleeping bags. These are fine, but they are passive insulation. They trap heat. They do not generate it. When the grid fails in January and the interior temperature of your home drops to match the exterior, passive insulation often fails because the heat source, your body, is running on a calorie deficit. You are a dying battery trying to warm a cold room. You need to understand the physics of microclimates. Do not try to heat the house. The house is a sieve. It leaks thermal energy through every window, outlet, and crack in the drywall. Trying to heat 2,000 square feet of airspace with a small propane heater is thermodynamically illiterate. You will run out of fuel in 3 days. You must surrender the house to the cold. You need to build a nest inside the house. This is a structure within a structure. Set up a small camping tent in the middle of your living room. If you don't have a tent, build a fort out of mattresses and sofa cushions. Why? Volume reduction. The average human body radiates roughly 100 watts of thermal energy at rest. In a large room, this energy disperses instantly, achieving nothing. In a small, enclosed volume, like a tent, that 100 watts is trapped. The air volume is small enough that your body heat alone can raise the ambient temperature by 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit. But you can hack this physics equation further. We return to the junk aisle for a specific tool, the Mylar emergency blanket. They sell these as tiny foil packets for hikers. You should buy 50 of them, but do not wrap yourself in them like a baked potato. That is ineffective because Mylar is conductive. If it touches your skin, it conducts cold into you. Instead, you use them as construction material. Tape the Mylar blankets to the inside walls of your tent or cushion fort. You are creating a radiant heat reflector. Thermal radiation leaves your body. It hits the Mylar. It bounces back. You are creating a feedback loop of infrared energy. Inside this Mylar-lined microclimate, with 2 or 3 family members huddling together, you are combining your wattage. 3 humans generate 300 watts of heat. In a reflective, insulated box of only 60 cubic feet, you can maintain a survival temperature even if the house outside is below freezing. You are effectively living inside a thermos. This requires no wood, no gas, no electricity. It relies solely on the laws of radiation and convection. It allows you to conserve your precious caloric fuel because your body stops shivering. We have now secured the calories, the logistics, and the security/environment. You have built a system that operates independently of the industrial grid. You have insulated yourself from the cold and the desperate. But there is one final component, the most fragile component of all. The mind breaks before the body. The will to survive is not just a poetic phrase, it is a neurochemical state. And in the silence of a dead world, without the constant dopamine drip of phones, internet, and work, the human mind begins to eat itself. The silence is louder than the chaos. They do not warn you about the boredom. They think the apocalypse is a constant gunfight. It is not. It is 99% crushing boredom and 1% sheer terror. And that boredom is a psychological toxin. In the absence of external stimuli, the brain begins to devour itself. This is not poetry. It is neurobiology. Your brain is wired for constant input, notifications, traffic noise, work demands. When the grid fails, that input stream is severed. The silence is sudden and absolute. Within 48 hours, the dopamine receptors in your brain, starved of their usual digital hits, begin to misfire. This leads to lethargy, then depression, and finally, a state of catatonia or irrational rage. You can survive the cold and the hunger, but if you lose your mind, you are dead. You must treat your mental state as a logistical resource, just like the peanut butter or the water. You need a strict, operational rhythm. You cannot simply sit and wait for the lights to come back on. You must manufacture purpose. In a survival scenario, routine is the only thing separating you from the chaos. You wake up at a set time. You inspect the inventory. You rotate the Mylar. You ration the calories. You must enforce a military structure upon your family. This is not about control. It is about anchoring the circadian rhythm against the void of timelessness. The junk food plays a role here too. The sugar in the drink crystals, the salt in the ramen, these are chemical spikes that punctuate the day, creating temporal landmarks in a sea of gray hours. Now, step back. Look at the system we have built. We started with a simple premise: stop buying rice. But what we have actually done is dismantle the entire consumerist conditioning that they have programmed into you. They trained you to rely on complex cooking, fresh supply chains, and external energy sources. They trained you to be a dependent node in a fragile network. The modern grocery store is a lie. It is a monument to the just-in-time JIT delivery system. There is no back room full of food. The inventory on the shelves is all there is. The average supermarket turns over its entire stock every 72 hours. It is not a warehouse, it is a pipeline. And when the trucks stop, the pipeline runs dry in 3 days. By purchasing raw grains that require processing, you are betting that the water and gas utilities, which are just other pipelines, will remain intact. You are betting on the system. The junk food protocol is the rejection of that bet. By choosing the lipid brick, peanut butter, the sodium shield, chili, the carb-lipid hybrid, ramen, and the glucose spike, drink crystals, you have decoupled your survival from the infrastructure. You have moved from a flow-based existence to a stock-based existence. You have accepted the laws of thermodynamics. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transferred. You have chosen the most efficient, dense, and stable forms of energy transfer available to the civilian market. You are no longer a consumer. You are an energy manager. You have recognized that healthy is a relative term. In a functioning society, healthy means low-calorie, high-nutrient, fresh. In a collapsed society, healthy means alive. A starving man with six-pack abs is a corpse. A surviving man with a layer of insulation and a bloodstream full of sodium and glucose is a survivor. The rules of biology invert when the environment changes. Adaptability is not about being strong. It is about being efficient. The trap is believing that the world will go back to normal. The trap is thinking that this is a temporary inconvenience. You must prepare for the permanent shift. When you look at that jar of peanut butter, do not see a snack. See 2,500 calories of portable life. See a week of survival in a plastic jar. See the difference between watching your children fade and watching them endure. The final truth is this: the apocalypse is not a movie. There will be no dramatic music. There will be no hero coming to save you. There will be only the physics of cold, the chemistry of hunger, and the biology of violence. The universe does not care if you are a good person. It does not care about your career or your status. It cares only about your caloric input versus your thermal output. They will die waiting for the government to bring them water. They will die trying to boil rice on a fire they cannot light. They will die because they bought the fantasy instead of the fuel. You have the knowledge. You have the list. You have the $5 in your pocket. The grid is humming now, but the silence is coming. The store is open, but the doors will close. Go to the aisle. Ignore the judgmental looks. Buy the junk. Hide the calories. Close the door. When the world breaks, you will not need hope. You will have physics.